Science knowledge only adds to the excitement, the mystery, and the awe of a flower.
Evidence is evidence. It's public. Everybody can look at the evidence and assess it, and eventually, if there's enough evidence, come to the same conclusion.
For newcomers and old-timers alike, the Chloe Sanctuary hopes to give you insight into the health and happiness of your companion parrots. We hope to help you build happy homes using reliable and proven tools. The best homes are built on a rock-solid foundation. And the best foundation for a happy home is the bedrock of science. When we stand on the shoulders of giants, the scientists who have worked long and diligently to understand our companions, we can reach new heights of understanding. And understanding is the key to success. What does avian veterinary medicine have to tell us about our feathered friends? How can we prevent illness, see the signs of disease before it's too late, and care for our birds through ill health? What light does behavioral science shed on their nature, needs, and hopes? How can the tools of behavior shaping make our homes happier for us and our companions? How can we deal with biting, screaming, or other misbehavior? What is it like to live among parrots? Let them roam around about you and share a life with them. How much freedom do you give them? What happens if you form a bond of trust with them? Watch and see what understanding their true nature can do for you. Come with us on a journey as we do more than examine a parrot's world. We live in it. Make some popcorn and bring in a few wood blocks. Let everyone have something to chew and a comfortable place to perch. Cockatude is a presentation of the Chloe Sanctuary for Parrots and Cockatoos, a nonprofit charity dedicated to the empowerment of captive parrots and public awareness.
Hi, and welcome to Cockatude 44. Cockatoos with attitude. Parrot nature and nurture. The scorpion and the frog. And today, we've got with us Babaloo and Lorelei and Cause and Big Mouth Coco. Well, she's only a big mouth when there's cameras out or something she doesn't like. Then she gives her alarm call. We have Peaches. She's over here playing with wood. And we have Salamander. Salamander! What's up, Sal? And we also have Sugarbird. Hey, Sugarbird. Pretty girl. Yeah, I know. You think we're nuts when the cameras are up, but it's easy for you to say. So we're going to start with a short featurette introduced by Inspector Tuso, also called Sir Lancelot. And it's the story of the scorpion and the frog, which is actually important to our understanding of these guys and working with them. So, without further ado, come here, Bob. Come on. Bob will introduce you to the scorpion and the frog.
One day, a scorpion set out on a journey through the forests and hills. He reached a river. The river was wide and swift, and the scorpion stopped to reconsider the situation. He saw a frog nearby. "Hello, Mr. Frog," said the scorpion. "Would you be so kind as to give me a ride on your back across the river?"
"Well now, Mr. Scorpion, how do I know that if I help you, you won't try to kill me?"
the frog asked hesitantly. "Because," the scorpion replied, "if I tried to kill you, then I would die too, for you see I cannot swim." So the frog agreed to take the scorpion across the river. The scorpion crawled onto the frog's back, his sharp claws prickling into the frog's soft hide, and the frog slid into the river. The muddy water swirled around them, but the frog stayed near the surface, so the scorpion would not drown. He kicked strongly through the first half of the stream, his flippers paddling wildly against the current. Halfway across the river, the frog suddenly felt a sharp sting in his back. A deadening numbness began to creep into his limbs.
"You fool," croaked the frog. "Now we shall both die. Why did you sting me, Mr. Scorpion?"
"I could not help myself. It is my nature," the scorpion said. Then they both sank into the muddy waters of the swiftly flowing river.
Hi, we're back. Now, the scorpion and the frog. These guys have a long juvenile dependency period. And we're talking a year or more. Where, you look at a cat or a dog, they're with their parents for very short time. These guys don't generally get with their parents at all in captivity. The breeders take the eggs away. They take the eggs away. They put them in an incubator. You have more comments? Well, come on, say more. Salamander. They put them in an incubator, and then they wait for the birds to go, well, where's our eggs? And make more, okay? And not only does that stress the parents that are laying the eggs, it also stresses these guys, because they never get to meet their parents. And since I've seen pretty high figures on this, but we'll go conservative. About 80% of their behavior is learned, and the rest is innate. It's critical to understand what you can change and what you can't. You can change learned behavior, okay? You can modify behavior that comes from nature. In other words, if a bird is chewing the molding on your doors, you can redirect them into chewing something else. But you're not going to stop the chewing because that's an innate behavior. And some people will tell me, and I've heard it, that my bird doesn't do that. Well, in other words, they're letting me know that there's an aberration, that there's actually a psychological problem in their birds. Most birds will chew. Even little cockatiels, they like to chew. They aren't going to chew wood unless it's balsa wood or something like that, something very soft. But they chew, and part of that is conditioning their beak. Not that they think of it that way. I doubt they do. But we'll never know. So let's go through nature first. It's a short list. Let's talk about the common things between them and us. There's the primary reinforcers: food, sleep, rest when they're tired, not necessarily sleep, but rest. Those are all things that our bodies will demand of us, and they do that with them too. Heat, when you're cold, they need heat. When they're hot, they need some kind of coolness, just like us. So they have those in common. Especially with cockatoos, there's a social need that seems to be built in. They all seem to be social. If that weren't the case, since these birds are taken away from their parents and then to a pet store or whatever and then sold to somebody, why would they be social like this if they weren't trained to do it? Well, it's a nature kind of thing. It's a built-in kind of thing. How that social behavior manifests, that would come more under nurture. They naturally have the ability to fly, and if you've ever been around a bird, good example is wherever she is. She's quiet. Coco back here. She was not a flighted bird. Okay, she chewed her feathers off before she was a year old. She just had stubs, and she actually couldn't do much as far as flying. But if you put her in a situation where she's threatened, she will fly somewhere else. Or if she greatly desires something, she'll sometimes actually take off and fly. It's kind of funny because if you look at her face, and once you get used to these guys, you can tell by their feather position, the way their eyes look, what they're trying to say to you, body position. She looks like, how'd I get here? As if it was a miracle, okay? And that's because she wasn't in a situation where she had parents and siblings and a flock to show her how to fly. So she has the ability, but it's weak.
We hope you will consider supporting us on Patreon today. This is how it works. We produce up to 2 videos a month. As a patron, you pledge to give us a donation, whatever you feel is right and meets your budget. Patreon gives us your gift monthly. You can easily set a limit on how much you donate a month. You can change the amount of your pledge at any time. Your gift will allow us to continue bringing you entertaining and informative videos. Patreon.com/Chloe Sanctuary. We look forward to your participation in Cockatude.
Another thing that appears to be nature is, it's probably because they can't see in the dark, when the sun comes up, most of these guys will squawk. At sunrise, when the sun goes down, it's starting to go down, they will squawk. We don't know exactly why that is. We saw that in the, there's a book called The Parrots of Lochio, and they talk about it in there, how this was a pattern that they saw. We've seen it in other birds. A good example is a friend of mine was in Indonesia, and he had taken his family there. As far as I know, he's still married. I don't know if I would take kids and a life partner or a group of any kind to Indonesia to live in a little hut. But one morning they heard this horrible thunder, and it rains and stormy there all the time. The humidity is like 110%. Of course, I'm kidding, but the humidity is 100% all the time. So it's not the place where most people would want to go. But they heard the storm. They heard the thunder, but they couldn't hear the rain on the top of the hut they were in. And they were out in the periphery of the city. So they open the little door and they look outside, and there's like 500 umbrella cockatoos all going rah, 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 at the same time. And that's that morning need. Now, obviously there's some social thing to that, so they will do it in a social situation, and there may be a little bit of nurture in there as far as how long it lasts and that kind of thing. But generally it appears that most of these guys, especially in the wild, you'll see it, they squawk when the sun rises and they squawk when the sun goes down. So they preen. It's something they do. They cannot actually preen their own heads. And it appears that that's something in their nature. It's innate. Preening anywhere below the neck is more of a mating behavior. And obviously, like us, they have the urge to mate and procreate. It comes out in different ways. We know that birds that are hand-raised by humans can't raise families. And they miss some steps in their development that makes it so they can't raise families. It also causes things like feather destructive behavior and stereotypical behavior, where you see a bird pacing back and forth or a bird going like this with its neck. That seems to be the stem cause of it, and then lack of attention, lack of stimulation is the other part. Something else that they seem to have in a nature way is this need for stimulation. They have a need to be stimulated, kind of like the human mind. They have an advanced mind, where we just haven't had a chance to look at this in depth, but they just found out they have a different type of neuron than we do. They have these special neurons that have capabilities we don't have. They also have a different part of their brain they use as a seat of consciousness. So they have an intense need to be stimulated. Plus, they get a lot of stimulus from their eyes. I mean, they see so much better than us. They see into the ultraviolet. That's right, salamander. That's right. They see into the ultraviolet. They see into the fluorescent. Hi, sugar. Hey, Lorelai. Nice hop. I'm cool. I can't even believe Coco was being quiet. I shouldn't have said it. I probably jinxed it. Not that I believe in that kind of thing, but... You dancing back there, boy? So this need to vocalize is common in most species, as salamander's doing over there. Also, the need to show off, which is actually a display. Generally, display is done in mating situations. They're either asking, that's right, they're either asking to find a mate or they're doing it for their mate. So we'll see that too. It gets bent and twisted in our world, but we'll see that too. There are other things that are innate. Obviously, if you put your hand on something hot and you burn your hand and you pull your hand away, they of course will jump away from pain as well. Innately, and that's one of the reasons that Coco, when she runs into a situation that spooks her, she'll turn and fly, even though she doesn't seem to use flight as her normal mode of transportation. Generally, she tends to walk from place to place or ask me to pick her up. That's her preferred method. But any bird, even ones without wings that that have been clipped, which I don't agree with that. I mean, there's a lot of arguments one way or another, but I don't think it's necessary to clip them. They can still fly when they're clipped, and they can't control their flight. But nonetheless, all that aside, when she gets spooked, she flies. Okay, and it's automatic. The other thing you'll notice, that's a nature kind of thing, is if they get nervous, they're looking for a place to go. So they're doing this. Even the ones that have been clipped, like, where can I fly to? And it seems to be, again, a nature kind of thing. You can't change it. You may be able to divert it. You may be able to, send it here or send it there. Like with him, he recently developed this thing he picked up from Sugar where she cries very quietly. It's quiet. He does it 10 times as loud. And when he does it, it's not as pleasant as when she does it. Okay, so I can't stop him from vocalizing. That's a normal thing. What I can do is make it, it's good boy. I can encourage that kind of sound, which is pleasant, as opposed to the other crying sound. Right, Salamander? Right, Sal? You're all fired up today. Hey, Bab. Hey, Baba, do you? Good boy. Good boy. Lorelai, where are you going? Now you leave him alone. Now you leave her alone. That's okay. You guys can be good to each other. Okay, Kaz? Working with these two to get them so that they don't have issues one to the other. And it's working. Because her sitting on my shoulder 2 months ago, he wasn't going to put up with that. He would be doing his dodge look, which is this one, trying to look how he can get around me, or how can I get around this situation. I got to get to her. And he's not doing that. I got to make sure she does not go after him again, though, because if that happens, we're back to square. Not back to square one. But we're going to say if we were at square 20, we'd be back to square 5. We don't want to do that. So, do we, Bob? You going to pull my hair out of my arm? Ouch. That's unpleasant. It's not bad, though. I don't mind if you do it. You really have to. Let's take a little break here, and we'll look at a little video about Bob. And then we'll be back, and what we're going to talk about is nurture. Those things that they get taught, the behaviors they have, like biting and screaming, which are not part of nature. Biting and screaming are not things they normally do. So unless you're biting into food or setting off an alarm because something's wrong. So back in a moment.
It is ignorance of Bob's nature that turned Babaloo into a living gargoyle. Bob's would-be parents made a hasty choice and found themselves in living hell, torn between guilt and frustration. I have seen the joy in Babaloo's eyes now that he has a new life with me as his companion. To see Babaloo love and trust again is worth the effort of a lifetime. But, once again, Bob is heading toward the pain of separation. My heart nearly broke the day I discovered that he was heading toward a cloacal prolapse, that his life will be cut short. To find love and acceptance and then have it stolen away from you by failing health is too much to bear. We can slow the progress of his failing health, but we can't stop it. He will need several surgeries and eventually Babaloo will die. We want to give him the best possible life until that day. His surgeries will become progressively more expensive over time. Won't you please lend Babaloo a hand and donate to his medical fund today?
Welcome back. Here we are. We're going to talk about nurturing now. Now, when these guys are raised, they're raised in an incubator. They hatch in the incubator. They're handled by humans. They're kept in usually isolated cages. I've seen them in pet stores where they're in like see-through cages so people can see in and what. But they're generally not given much to look at. Okay. In the wild, they would be in a hollow of a tree. There are only a few parrots that don't do that, so we're talking about they're in a hollow of a tree with their parents. They're getting fed by both mom and dad. There are exceptions. The Cockatoos, the males don't generally feed the babies, but for the most part, they're in this small space, so that's really not too abnormal, except that they're with their parents. They're seeing their mom and they're seeing their dad, and that's the point where we know this from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology that did field work, that the mother is teaching the child its name, so the baby bird's learning its name, and the name of its mom, and the name of its dad, and its siblings, and that all that process goes on. In the human world, they're just being raised up and fed. Sometimes, if they have a whole bunch of baby birds, they're really into like making a bunch of money off of breeding. They'll stick tubes down their throats and insert the food in there so they can go instead of having to sit there and feed them little by little. That's strictly a way of making more money. It's not. There's nothing good about feeding an animal like that. So anyway, they go through this process. They're handled by people. They may or may not receive some socialization at that point. Then from there, they go off to a pet store or they go into someone's home. At no point are they learning to fly. Okay, so the flight urge is there, but they're not learning it. Unless some human tries to teach them. Of course, we can flap our arms all we want, and we're not going to really be able to do that. So they're not getting much nurturing there. They're basically just getting like magnetized to being held, to being acclimated to touch, that kind of thing. That's basically what they're getting, and they're getting. Another thing that's happening is they're being exposed to whatever food they're going to get. Once they generally get weaned far too early. From everything I've studied, they should be weaning themselves, and of course, it's hard to sell, especially in the state I live in California. You're not allowed to. Don't do that, Lorelei. Don't go after the camera, please. Thank you. All right, eyes. I'm talking to you. Don't go after the camera. Okay? Don't ignore me. That's a good girl. So they get introduced to food. Quite often, it's not the best food because, again, it's like anything else. If you're trying to raise something up and you're trying to make a profit, you're not going to give like the number one ace food like Harrison's or even Rowdy Bush to them. You're going to pick something that's a little cheaper. Sometimes they put them on a seed mix. Whatever happens, they're acclimated to a certain type of food, so they're nurtured to eat a certain way. Often it's more like they're raised on candy bars because they're really not getting the type of nutrition they need. The initial baby food, which is like Zupreme makes it and KT has Exact, it's a mix that has it's good quality stuff, and it's given in the form of a liquid in a syringe one way or another. Mander bird. Well said, Mander. Well said. Good boy. Good boy. So then they go off to somebody and whatever food gets thrown at them, sometimes they get human food thrown at them, sometimes they get seeds, sometimes they get some pellets and occasionally some fresh vegetables. Sometimes they get fed well. And Coco, because of what I believe she had a burned crop from having a tube stuck down her throat with food that was too hot, she can only eat blended mash. So when she came to me, she was getting oatmeal, bananas, and peanut butter mixed together. And that was pretty much the only thing she would eat. She'd eat some pine nuts and some papaya, again, all soft things. Eventually, I figured it out and started giving her blended mash in a syringe. She just licks it off the end of the syringe. And she eats about 40 grams of that in the morning and about 15 at night. And now she's getting some good nutrition. The people who had her did the best they could for her, but obviously she didn't want anything else. She has trouble swallowing. So, have to be careful with this baby, don't we? Yes, we do. How come you're so quiet? You okay? You're so quiet. What's going on, Coco? Why are you so quiet? So we can change what they eat, but it may take some time. I mean, they were raised that way. Then they were nurtured to eat a certain type of diet, and then they had other things thrown on them. I've known birds that like pizza. I mean, there's no problem with giving them a little bit of pizza, but sometimes that dough has a lot of salt in it, and salt is worse than not good for them. Too much salt can kill them. So, too much salt could kill you too, but we can take a lot of it, and by their body weight, they can take a lot less. So, right, Bob? Hi, Lorelai. Good girl. That's my good girl. You're a good girl. Oh, thank you, sweetie. I know you're just wiping your face, but yeah, it's a good girl. So let's go on to biting, and the biting thing is really a learned experience. Quite often, what happens with biting is that they don't have arms, of course. So when they go to climb over, they're going to use the appendage they have, which is their beak. So they'll go to put their beak down on someone, and generally it's better. If you've ever tried to stand on one point, that's not terribly good. If you've got more, you have a more solid base. This is nowhere near as solid as that. So they'll open their beak and go to put their beak down on people, and people will start to pull away. Now, if they've lost their balance, hi baby, if they've lost their balance, because this person pulled away, okay, then they're probably going to clamp down so they don't fall, especially if they've been clipped, because where are they going to go? They can't fly. Or if they haven't learned to fly, no one's taught them to, that may not be their first reaction. They may just want to clamp down. Now, as soon as someone goes, about that loud, someone screams because they just got bit, and of course they only got bit because they were pulling their arm away, you've now reinforced the behavior. You've taught the biting behavior to the... Are you sure? Oh, you are sure? Absolutely positive? Really? I'm not going to put on a movie for you right now. I'm sorry. We'll do that later, okay? But no movie right now. Oh, hi, baby. What are you doing, sweetie? You okay? Yeah. That's my sweet Cocoa Bird. That's my sweet Cocoa Bird. Hello. So, quite often, that's how the biting behavior occurs. Now, with Bob, he was at an animal hospital, and they were kept trying to rehome him. They did a tremendous job getting him into people's homes, but he's so high energy. Yeah, hello. He's so high energy, and it's typical of his species, the greater sulfurs, to be high energy. If you ever see pictures of them in the wild in Australia, you'll see just how high energy they are. This being trapped in a cage and watching people walk back and forth, and then only getting out when they clean the cage, that's obviously going to make a problem. So he found, who knows how he's discovered this, but he learned that if he opens his beak and puts his head forward, which we would call a lunge, but if he opens his beak and puts his head forward, people backed off. So he could stay out of the cage longer after they cleaned it if he did that. The simple behavior, he learned it. In the wild, we don't see this lunging behavior. We see a lot of play, and the only time you see any what we would call aggressive behavior is when they're protecting a mate. For example, if two birds, hi sweetie, if two birds are mated to each other and one dies, then let's say the female dies, the male's going to start looking for another mate. And if there aren't a lot of females around, he may approach a mate that's he may approach a female that's already mated. And at that point, the other male's going to get involved. And if the suitor continues to approach the female, then that could end up in a serious aggressive fight. That's about the only time we see it. We see it in captivity, and I think most of it is just learned behavior. Like us, we open our mouths when we're surprised. They open their beak, and if they open their beak and go forward with it and people back off, then they've learned the behavior of lunging. If they should feel terribly threatened, which is about the only time they would do this, and if they bite down on someone and the person makes a loud noise, we would say ow or whatever, some loud sound, and they pull away, that's another way that they can be trained, because they're frightened by what's in their environment. They do something and that thing leaves, well, you learn to do it. If you had a polar bear knocking on your front door and you screamed and the polar bear ran away, well, you'd probably scream again if you saw another polar bear. It's kind of that kind of thing. So another thing that is not nature but nurture is these guys make calls to each other. And we don't know this for sure, but this seems to be the problem, that they're calling you and you're not responding, and they know you're there. Okay, they can hear you in another room. They've seen you walk off. We know from research these guys understand things are in the other room. They don't have to smell it like dogs do. They know something's in the other room if they've seen them go. If they've seen you only go in the back room and come out of there and you've never gone into the back room and the car's left, well, then they're going to know that you're back there. So you don't respond to them when they call, and after a while they keep calling and calling and calling, and then it becomes just squawk, 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 squawk constantly. Bob had that problem. We call that screaming. When you have a repetitive call, every couple of seconds, every second, whatever it is, they develop a certain rhythm, and then it just goes. He does that at night. I let him get away with it at night. The rest of the day, I ignore him when he does it, and I wait for him to say something nice. As soon as he says something nice, I reward it. And again, it's not nature for them to do that. It's something they've learned. It's nurturing. However, the environment is nurturing them to learn something. So again, repetitive squawking, which we call screaming, that's the technical term for it. Long repetitive squawking is not something they do in the wild. So it's a learned behavior, and again, any learned behavior can be changed, and you can get rid of it completely. You're not going to get rid of it squawking, but as far as the repetitive part, you can knock it out. And you're not going to stop them from doing it in the morning, and you're not going to stop them from squawking in the morning and squawking at night without causing a further aberration. You're going to cause them to lose a little bit of their sanity if they can't do this normal thing. They may come to you that way, they may not do it, but in most cases, in a grand number of cases, these guys do squawk, AM and PM. So when you got something like biting, you can change it. When you have some, because it's nurture, you have something like screaming, you can get rid of it. We call it extinguish it, because it's not innate. It's not something that's nature.
Hi, Peaches.
Hi, Peaches. Hi, Peaches. Oh, you gonna display? You gonna display, Peaches? Pretty girl. Pretty girl. Pretty girl. Come on, pretty girl. Wanna come up and see me? No. Wanna sit there? Okay. You sure? You sure? No, you're not so sure. I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about it, huh? That's a good girl. That's a good girl. She actually wants me to preen her tail end because she can't do it. And I've had enough comments about that. I'm going to always preen her tail because she can't do it. And I don't want any more $1,000 surgeries for her. It's not safe for her to have impacted follicles. So mating behavior is, certain parts of that are nature too. I mean, it seems like the what are you doing? What are you doing? No. Back up here. I'm giving her too much attention. Is that what you're telling me? She gets her attention, sweetie. So obviously they're going to be seeking a mate, and if you're petting them below the neck, there are exceptions, as there are with her. Bob is mated to me. I can pet him down the back a little bit. I can't pet him very long that way. And but he is mated to me. I'm not going to get him any more mated to me than he already is. And Sugar is, because of her extreme condition, because of the way they came here. I have 3 birds that are mated to me. I don't prefer that, but because mate territoriality can be pretty scary. I mean, they can attack other people. Like when Bob attacked a friend of mine, well, I was holding his feet, so he really didn't get to do anything. But when the guy tapped me on the shoulder, while he was telling me a story, Bob just leapt for his eyes. Boy, he was right on it. And I had him by the feet, so it's no big deal. I'll show you the hold. Come here, Bob. Can I show him the hold? Come on. You know you're... Never mind. Let me show you. I'll use you. Okay. Here's the basic hold. Okay? You just put your thumb over their feet. You can also have it so that... Lorelai, can I grab your feet a different way? Another way is to put your thumb in between. You can have it over, or you can have it in between, holding a little bit on each side. And just make sure you catch their feet underneath so they can't go flying off. You'll have to tighten down if they start making flight motions. Or if you see their head darting, you want to kind of get a good hold on them, which is what I saw with him. Okay? I'm not going to be able to stop him from trying to defend me. That's not going to happen, because it's a nature thing. They defend their mates. What I can do is work with him so that he understands that I'm not... What I can do is work with him, have him see me as I pet her, or as I deal with Sugar, and how I come right back to him. Okay, so I'm not going to let him go or drop him as a mate because I'm mated to other birds. So you can introduce him to people slowly and tell them to move slowly around me, and that they don't get too close to me at first, and slowly move in. That's one way. But again, that's nature to defend. So the nurturing side of it is that they learn to defend in different ways in our world. One of the ways they defend is just an aside, but they'll turn around and bite you. And the reason they do that is because they see a danger in the world out there, and they're warning you about it. Now, if they turn around and bite their mate who has feathers, they're not really going to hurt those feathers. I mean, they're just grabbing a hold of the feather. When they grab us, and a lot of us tend to be awfully thin-skinned, in that one bite, and they try to get rid of the bird, right? So they're thin-skinned, but they'll bite you, and because our skin is out there, it can hurt. That's not what they're trying to do. They're warning you. And to you, it may just be that out of the blue, you got bit, but in most cases, it's them actually trying to warn you or defend you when you get bit in that situation. So, and another thing is we were talking about when we were discussing nature, they need stimulation. Well, they're taught different ways, or they are nurtured by their environment to have different types of stimulation. For example, Bob, somehow, somewhere along the line, probably because he didn't have grates on the bottom of the cage he was in, and he didn't have any toys to play with, he learned to play with dried poop. And obviously he didn't have much else. So he was playing with paper and dried poop. So what I've done is I've provided a lot of other things, alternates, that he can play with. So as long as he's got these alternates and there's no dried poop around, he'll avoid it. And again, that's a learned behavior, so it's pretty easy to change. But you're not going to get rid of the need for stimulation. That's always going to be there. So you've got to provide some alternative for a behavior he was nurtured into. And when I say nurtured, his environment that he had when he was growing up didn't provide a lot of stimulation, and the only thing he had to play with was that, and he needed the stimulation, so that's what he learned to do. Now, that may have had some effect on his digestion and the issues we're having there in the past, but we'll never know the answer to that. Because no one's ever going to research why these birds have prolapses. You'd have to have a massive number of birds that you would watch and clinically to see if one developed the condition. So that's not going to happen, sadly. But we wouldn't want them to develop that, would we, Peach? Would we, Cause? No. Peach, what are you doing down there? Getting a little too... You starting to get a little wound up. Why don't you join some wood, kid? You got wood. You got wood. No one's playing with this. You want to play with this? You want to play with that? That's good to chew on. Seen you chew on those before. Most behaviors you see are going to spring from the need for stimulation, or the need to eat, or the need to mate, or the need for social interaction. And then built on that, you're going to have their learned behaviors that are going to come out of that. So Lorelei, one of the ways she gets her stimulation is to fly up and whack me on the side of the head and land. Today, she actually, when I was leaving the kitchen, I guess she thought I was going to stay out of the kitchen. So she flew up and landed in the middle of my back. I felt I felt her toenails going into my back as she grabbed a hold of the shirt. And then as I walked back into the room, I had Cause. I was going back into the kitchen. I had Cause, and Cause has learned to sit on top of the water bottle. We make reverse osmosis water here to keep lead and junk and all that stuff out of the water. So what does she do? Well, there's a colander sitting on top of it. I hadn't moved it away yet. So she flies up there, and as she's flying to it, I said, Cause, that's probably not going to work. She knocked that colander off and landed up there, and then she bounced her head up and down. Didn't you, Cause? She bounced her head up and down like, well, I made my sitting spot. And the colander's, of course, on the floor. Right, Cause? Right, Cause? You guys are so calm today. What's going on? It's that time of day. Yesterday I did this whole production. The thing I forgot was, first of all, I only got 4 hours of sleep the night before. Not a smart thing to do that. I should have known better. I forgot to turn off the air conditioner. So there's this horrible air conditioner sound through the whole thing. I just dumped it and said, we'll start right over. Yesterday they were all active. There was flying going around. There was all kinds of things. Today they're just kind of hanging out, and it's close to noon. So that's why. It's the middle of the day when they tend to be relaxed. You're the only one that's really made a big noise today. Big boy. Big boy. Even Coco's relaxed. Say, if I did this yesterday like I did at 2 o'clock, she would probably be sounding off. But you're a little relaxed today, aren't you, kid? So most importantly, you got to remember the scorpion and the frog, okay? The scorpion is going to have its nature. It's going to sting. And the frog is going to die if it carries the scorpion across the water because it's in the frog's nature. Loud vocalization is in their nature. The need for social interaction is in their nature. The need for stimulation and investigation is in their nature. The urge to mate with something and form progeny is in their nature. And since they happen to be smarter than almost all the other animals on the planet, I mean, we are talking primate level intelligence here. You're going to have to be creative to fulfill those needs. And the things built on those needs, such as their hunger, where you have to direct them to better food, they've been nurtured to eat a certain way, and so you have to slowly change it. Just recently with her, hi Peach, what's going on, girl? Hi Peach. Dog gonna die. Peach. Just recently with her, she gets a tiny bit of peanut butter on a craft stick, right? Well, I've been getting the peanut butter, this organic peanut butter, not that I think organic's better than the other, but at Costco. And the recent batch, when I tested it, was more like glue. It was so thick, and I mean, you could choke on that stuff. So I decided not to use it. So I got another brand, and she doesn't like it. So I tried mixing half and half for a while, but I tried to switch her completely over, and she's not taking it. That's okay because the main reason I give her that is so she'll take her medicine. She's taking her medicine anyway. So it's best if I can phase that out of her diet anyway. She didn't have a lot of things I could reward her with to get her to take the medicine, so that was something that worked. Right? Yeah. She also taught Bob to preen. He wasn't a preener until she came along. She loves to be preened, so she taught Bob to do it. And as you can see, she's got him doing it again. It's a learned behavior for him, although he had the innate, the nature to do it. She actually taught him how. Sometimes he preens in the wrong areas, though, and we have to watch him close. But keep in mind, they have these basic natures you can't change. You can't change the basic nature, but you can redirect it. So if you have a bird that's chewing on your furniture, you can put wood out there. One example is that, here's an example of what you can do. You can put, you could do what I did, which is you can put a piece of 2x4 in place of the molding on one door. And then you can encourage them to chew on the 2x4. That works pretty well. You have to watch that they don't go around and start to get the entrance of the doorway, inside the door, the pocket where the door goes. But you can put things where they normally try to chew on, let's say this is wood, which it is, it's covered. You put wood down that if they're going over here to try to chew on something, you put something over in that area that they'll go and chew. The nature to preen is there, okay, and also to want to mate. So if you're petting a bird, I've had people tell me this too, and I've seen it myself, so it's not like I had to be told, but see, I've had people mention this to me as well, that they're petting their bird, and the bird will actually lean over and try to adjust their body so that you go down farther and pet down here, or pet under the wings. They'll lift their wings up. These are natural behaviors. You're not going to change them, but you can focus on the head and not get trapped in it. And when you're dealing with creatures this smart, that's not going to be easy, but you can do it. And something else someone had said that I wanted to get into this video that I saw on Facebook is they were wondering, well, what's the problem with having them get mated to you? I mentioned that there's a ferocity in protecting mates that you don't want to be around. Mate territoriality can be dangerous. You have a small child come over, and the child gets up in your lap and then runs off. The bird might attack the child. The bird might attack the child. It's not the bird's fault. It's your fault for getting the bird mated to you. Now, I say fault. If you didn't know about it, it's not your fault per se, but you should know as much as you can about the species. And I'll give you a story from recently that will make that clear. We recently took in Gloria, and she was an eclectus, and they flew her in from the East Coast, and she was having feather destructive behavior. And she got tested. She was tested and quarantined over there. She had all the basic tests to make sure she didn't have any diseases she could pass on. And she was given a bill of good health. Now, they can't see inside the body that well. You can use x-rays, but what was wrong with her wasn't in the x-rays. But here's the key. Small birds live less time than large birds. So if you're talking about a conure, maybe 25 years, 30 years, you're talking about someone like salamander, a moluccan, 80 or more years, okay? So generally, the smaller the bird, the shorter the lifespan, the larger the bird, the longer the lifespan. So there's an exception. The eclectus normally lives to just 30 years. So even though from the size of the bird, which is roughly about the size of an African gray, maybe a little bigger, you would think 60 or 70 years, it's at least 60. It's half that. So she was 33. She was 32 when she came out here, and shortly after she turned 33, she died from natural causes due to advanced age. I didn't know that. That was one. I'd done a lot of study on eclectus. For some reason, I never looked at lifespan. And the reason is cognitive bias. Because we tend to think, well, as a rule of thumb, small birds live shorter lives than large birds, large parrots. So I made that mistake. That doesn't mean I wouldn't have taken Gloria out here. I would have. But I should have investigated her health more. But I should have looked into it deeper. And certainly the lifespan of a parrot, you should know it if you're going to have one. And so when she came here, she should have been more on a hospice program. But it ended up being a spa for her for the last month of her life. She came out and she had these bowls with all kinds of treats in it. I found out what she liked. She got the mash. She got blueberries, which she loved. She loved the raspberries. She liked edamame. She liked the muffins I made. She got mash delivered to her like a male would do in the wild. Again, I was trying to get her to, now in this case I was trying to get her to bond to me, because they can bond, to 12, 15 different males. They're different than the rest of the parrot world. They have multiple relationships, which is not true in most parrots. They're a mated pair, and that's that. And as long as both are alive, they stay mated pair. That, to our knowledge, that's the way most parrots are. So getting her bonded to me was no big deal. She could bond to another male, or another one. It's no big deal. So she started making lovely little calls to me, and whenever she saw me, she'd make basically a mating call to me, and she passed away. So that one fact, how long they live, would have certainly caused me less pain, but it's not something well known. The lifespan of an eclectus is not well known. So much better known are the umbrellas and the African greys and the Moluccans and the Amazons. But learn as much as you can about these guys, because the more you know, the better you can care for them. And also, for example, when a bird bites you, if you know that there's a possibility that something in the environment made it so they wanted to warn you, to protect you, that bite doesn't have the same meaning, okay? For example, if you were walking across the street, you started to walk across the street, and your life partner shoves you onto the sidewalk, you might initially be upset until you saw the car go flying by that would have hit you. It's the same kind of thing. They do that kind of thing out of love. Okay? Not the kind of love we have. We don't know what their emotions are. But they do that kind of thing to protect their mate. So, and you may not even see it. I still remember with Chloe that little can of Rumford baking powder. And when she started going squawking, she was actually screaming. It was an alarm call. But if it's an alarm call, it was a scream, in that it was just repetitive and it wasn't going to stop. It took me 10 minutes to find out what she was doing about. Once I took the Rumford out of the picture and put it back in the cabinet, she stopped making noise. She did that kind of thing once on a lamp I put up. I had a lamp that had, the ones that have the multiple lights on them. And, oh my word. She went on and on and on and on, and I kept looking at her going, it's a lamp. I worked with her though, and eventually I took all the bulbs out of it, and she used it as a perch thing. She liked to climb up there. But initially, she wanted nothing to do with it. Right, Bob? Oh, yeah? Peaches, you want to say goodbye to the people? Peaches, you want to say goodbye to the people? No, how about Cause? Cause doesn't get to say goodbye very often. Cause, you going to say goodbye to the people? Cockatoo! Cockatoo! Whoops! Goodbye, we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
We welcome your feedback on our videos. We look forward to your insights, tips, questions, stories, and pictures. You can email us at cockatude@chloesanctuary.org, reach us on Twitter @ChloeSanctuary, and join with us on our Facebook Chloe Sanctuary page.
to science knowledge only adds to the excitement, the mystery, and the awe of a flower.